my first exposure to job to be done was really in the 90s, end of the 90s, when I was working for P&G, and we were doing job to be done without having the name for it. But we went to consumers, housewives at the time we called them, and we tried to find out what they do they try to achieve. Parents with babies, what do they try to achieve with Pampers? One of my first job as an assistant there in the first 3 weeks was, okay, you go out to housewives, go out to homes, do home visits, and just see what they do. And I asked my boss at the time, well, what do I ask? And he said, you don't ask anything, you just look and watch and observe what they do and what do they try to achieve. And that's pretty much one definition of job to be done. What do you try to achieve? I read later on an article which was really groundbreaking for marketing and strategy, which is marketing myopia. I don't know if you know this. Is really, I mean, most of you were not born. I was hardly born when this article came out. It was in the 60s. It's called Marketing Myopia. And basically it says all the business people are myope. They only look at one thing, which is their product, and not at the rest, which is really the consumer or the user or the people they serve. So that was myopia. And then later on, Jonathan mentioned it, I got, by an accident, met someone who was working with Tony Alvik, who is the founder of ODI, Outcome Driven Innovation. And this guy, his name is Roger, he was doing ODI projects in Europe, but already in the 90s. So Tony was alone, he hasn't even written his book, but he has his methodology and he published some of this, and Roger was doing projects here, and they developed together the first let's say the first version of ODI. And then in 2007, 2008, we were a bit suffering from strategy because they were very rigid and very strict. And we had a lot of ideas, and then we created CFI and have applied CFI in the last 5-10 years quite successfully for large companies. And that's an experience always based on job to be done, which I would like to share. So, okay, that's CFI. That's a very simple framework, but I come to it at a later stage. I mean, the basic question, innovation is very easy. It's very easy to do something new. That's, you just do something new. But successful innovation is maybe not so easy. That's the problem. What is successful innovation, and why is successful innovation not so easy? I mean, you can look at any study and scientific study, consultant reports. You look at the Google on Google. You look on the flop list of the year, and you find many examples of failed innovation. Products that were introduced into the market but then just disappeared, were not adopted by the consumer, by the market. Even worse, and that no one talks about, is all the efforts that is put into innovation and doesn't come out to a viable product. Just taking long time and then maybe not even making it to the market. That's even the larger cost. So successful innovation is not easy. And why we believe successful innovation is not easy is because this term here is vaguely defined. What is value? I mean, speaking about value to the market, value to the customers, or value to the users. Not talking about value of a company. But this term is not really defined. What is value? If you think about what value is, then you very quickly realize that it is highly subjective. It's what I attribute as value to something, and you might think differently. So we think a lot about value, and value is also not new for business. There was a shift, a paradigm shift in the 80s, where suddenly companies were not creating products and then producing products and then selling products, but they started to think about value as a delivery. So business is a delivery system where you first think of where can you provide value, then you create the product, so you design it, and then you basically sell it. So that was the shift that came in the 90s. So what is value? Let's look at value from different angles. There is psychology. Psychology, there is a theory in psychology which is called theory of affordance, which says humans judge a thing not by its properties, but by what they can do with it. Quite interesting studies. They say, okay, you don't judge this chair by how it looks, but features it has, the properties it has, but what can I do with it? I mean, this is a key. You immediately see it's a key, but you also see there's something wrong with it, and you can probably not open and close a lock. That's how we judge it. That goes on through your mind. You don't say, okay, it's this shape and these features, but you say, what can I do with it? So that's one explanation for job to be done. Ted Levitt is, in our view, the founder of job to be done. Ted Levitt wrote this article, Marketing Myopia, in the 60s. He coined this phrase, people don't want to drill, they want a hole in the wall, just to open eyes. And our impression is that many people, when they hear this, they immediately know what it's all about. It creates an immediate mind shift. So when you are a startup and you start to think about your product that you are creating, what kind of products are you creating? What are you doing? Software. People don't want software. They don't want to, not even software as a service. They don't want, what do they want? What's the hole they want? What other products are you working on? Who is in software? Who is in something else?
We put internet on airplanes.
Huh?
We put internet on airplanes.
Internet on airplanes. Okay, you can say people want internet on airplanes. But what do they want?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the job they want to achieve? So, I mean, of course, Levitt knew this because it's going halfway. It's not the hole in the wall they want, But what do they really want? They want to put up a bookshelf, or they want to put up a painting, or that's the job they want. And the drill is only a solution to get this job done. So that's typically what job to be done, but in our view, the start of job to be done was this perspective shift. And it can do a lot when you working in larger companies and they are all focused on their products, and you start to shift the perspective to this, then immediately something good is coming out, can come out. So it's really a perspective shift. Then there was Clayton Christensen. This is a history lesson. There was Clayton Christensen. Who knows Clayton Christensen? Who has read from him? He was the total hot guy in the internet .com bubble. He's a Harvard professor for innovation. He's a fantastic guy, a great charisma, and he published a book called Innovator's Dilemma, which basically explains why what's the dilemma of an innovator. So he talks about not perfect solutions which the innovators create, and they're getting better and better and better, so they disrupt suddenly the established players. And the dilemma was then solved with his next book, which was Innovator's Solution, where he proposed a solution. And one part of this solution, one chapter actually, chapter 3, was all about jobs to be done. So he basically took the concept, which was old, and he put it into innovation. It was before it was in marketing, consumer goods marketing. He took it into innovation, and he defines the job, which is the most popular definition at the moment: the progress of a user towards a goal or a purpose. So it has two elements. Let's think about this. There is this goal and purpose to achieve. That's the hole in the wall, or that's the painting we put up. And then he talks about the progress of a user. So the progress are kind of the steps to get there. But it's not the activities in its pure sense. It's very close to an activity or to a workflow or to a journey step, but it's in our view a little bit different. And he also says in certain contexts, in certain conditions. So the context also comes in, which we haven't put here. But progress of a user towards a goal or a purpose. That's Christensen. If you Google on the internet job to be done, there are many discussions going on, there are debates going on, and here are some of the quotes. He says, and that's really impressive, when you want to understand job to be done, then look at his, watch his milkshake video. It's about 5 minutes, and he explains job to be done on the example of milkshake. Very impressive, yeah?
Regarding all these guys who talk about students, they all take the example of physical products.
Yeah.
And this is another point that there are few people who are talking about the use of student in software industry. It's actually about physical products than this paradigm of physical products. It's kind of weird because
yeah. Many examples are from physical products, but that's in general the case. Huh? Not many are from services examples, but I think the application of job to be done in services and in software is even bigger. There is a whole movement which is called service logic. I don't know if you know this. Service logic turns product and service upside down. It says every product provides a service. And that's the first quote from Christensen. A product, he says, people hire a product. They don't buy a product, they don't use a product, they hire a product to get a job done. And then when something better comes along, they fire the product. So this works for investment, like, for example, Caterpillar trucks. They don't own. They hired the truck, and as long as it's good, and then they throw it away if something else is coming along. So a product delivers a service. And the software is the same. The software delivers a service to get a job done. Oh? So why do you want to, I mean, what's the services that you provide with the software? Okay, you take Microsoft. What's the service of Excel? What job does it fulfill? So that's an interesting question. So hire a product and then fire it when you don't want it anymore, when something better is coming along. Job is a way to express a user need, that's Alvig, and provide a frame, a customer-centric frame that's independent of a solution. Here, customer centricity is a buzzword that has come up. Okay, so he has put that in to be on the safe side. But the important sentence in our view is independent of a solution. We call that solution-free. How do you take out the solution? Why is this important? Because if you ask users on a solution level, the user is boxed. He's boxed in the existing solution. And he will give you ideas that are boxed in the existing solution. That's by definition not innovation. So you have to take the user out of the box. And that's why it has to be solution-free. Yeah?
Quick question, and maybe you'll touch upon that later, but to me, user stories and the 5 whys are really the same as sort of jobs to be done, as in digging so long until there is really no more to dig to.
Yeah.
So how do you see those sort of not competing with each other, but sort of being replacements for each other?
Well, I don't know the 5 whys so in detail.
Why until
But we use these techniques. So we ask why. It's called laddering. You go further when we do explorations. We use it. I think the big difference is that we have clearly defined what we look for, and I'll show that. User exploration can be very frustrating for innovation purposes because you don't get any innovative ideas. You do user exploration, prototype testing with users in the agile way. It can be dangerous, can be, it can lead to wrong results because users are human beings, and human beings don't like things that are new, that they don't know, and then they kill it. So prototype with users is, we don't say don't do it, but you have to be careful. I think what is important, what we think is important, is job to be done is a frame to define what you look for. And that is important. A good way we like job to be done is a lens through which to understand value creation. Or we say job to be done is a concept helping companies, startups and big companies, to define and predict what will be of value, what will be valuable for people. That's how we define it. Of course, our business model is companies. We provide services and projects to companies. But if you're a startup, you can say, okay, job to be done is a concept helping me to define and predict what will be of value to my people, to my market. No? Okay? So far, so good? There is this drill and hole in the wall is so inspiring to some people that they get misleaded and sidetracked. Huh? It's not so easy to apply, because once you start, you realize that there's so many jobs that you have to understand, or that they are on so many different levels that confusion is there quickly. Huh? It's not like Osterwalder saying pain, gain, and here is a job. It can become very complex. So how to manage this complexity? And the first thing is, job to be done is not just the function. So job to be done is much more than a function. We call it, it's really what's the meaning behind it? What's the higher meaning? What's the purpose behind it? Job to be done can easily be put into a function. That's the function that people want to do. They want to put up a painting, so that's the job, and that's a functional job. And then you put it up. You try to understand what is involved in putting up a painting. But that's too limiting. Job to be done is more than just a function. Is that clear? Function. Have you experienced this dilemma of being too much into the function?
The just sentence.
Yeah.
As it, and it's harder to define the emotional job and the functional one as well, because that means you really ask the good questions to get this sense. So necessarily it's harder to define this one. But it's hard to separate some ideas from the
Ulrich is very functional. He's an engineer. He used to be an engineer, and he's very process thinking, and that's his strength. But you mentioned emotional jobs. We say there are no emotional jobs. I mean, you read everywhere there are emotional jobs and social jobs. But if you think about it, there are not emotional jobs. Because what is an emotion? Emotion is things like fear or frustration or sorrow or pain, or things like this is emotion. And this is always triggered by something. So the emotion can be a result of a poorly performed job. Yes, that can be the case. But the job itself is not. There's no emotional job to create fear. Okay, but that's very functional.
How about feeling cool? I'm going to buy an Apple Watch because I feel cool, and people will think I'm really cool.
Well, feel cool.
I don't care about actually doing anything with the watch. I just want to,
Yeah.
Isn't that an emotion?
Yeah. No. Feel cool is not an emotion in my view, except that if you feel cold, then that can trigger an emotion. But feel cool, we would phrase it differently. We would say to impress someone. To impress, why do people buy an Apple Watch? It's not just the function of an Apple Watch, especially when it comes out, but it's also to impress someone. Hey, I'm the first one who has an Apple Watch. and to obtain conversation pieces, for example. Very typical when a new product comes out. You know, what's this? You're the first one who have this Apple Watch, so I'm impressed, huh? And then you have discussions about it.
Well, I mean, I give a phone to my kid because I feel safe. It removes
Feel
my
safe.
fear, so.
Feel safe is that is in our view a job that we have quite often, huh? And I solved that. Feel safe is a very interesting one, huh? But it's not just a function, huh? It's more. Okay, we have this example. Grandpa's watch clock stand is in the living room. I mean, first it looks ugly. Time is not precise. Sometimes it stops. Why is it still in the living room? What's the job of this clock?
Is it still in the living room?
Huh?
Is it still in the living room?
Yeah.
Remember.
Why do people hire this? You know, it's more. Okay. This clock has a meaning. This clock has a meaning to the person, and it's this meaning that you have to find. What's the meaning? What's the higher meaning behind it? It's not. I mean, we say it's the meaning that sells. That's how we call this internally. And there is a philosopher who says this. He wrote a lot about fashion, and it's really the meaning for a person that sells. Let's make an example. Pampers. I worked for Pampers. So what's the function of Pampers is to keep babies dry. That's the function. But what's the meaning behind this product?
I thought it was to keep the parents,
That's another
not
job.
be bothered.
Keep the parents, save time for the parents. Huh? But there is much more. There's a meaning behind this product. There's a role this product plays, or at least Procter tried to capture this role. Yeah.
All the members advertisements are just babies walking around and like the future. It's about the perspective of like the parents can envision the vision of the baby with the pampers. That's the main.
Very good. Very good. That's
You're a good parent.
parents. What do parents want most?
Happy babies.
Not just happy babies, successful babies in life. Huh? That's the key purpose. You grow up. That's almost like archetype. That's biological, huh? And that's the meaning behind this product. Pampers makes babies grow up and develop better, huh? Than if you don't use Pampers. And that was really the strategy of Pampers.
Can I ask at this point how, for example, that parents want successful babies, what did it influence in Pampers, in the product?
Everything, product development. Huh? So a whole range of new products. One was for newborn, one was for babies crawling on the floor. One was for babies standing up, in the process of standing up. One was for babies climbing. So it was a whole range of about 6 different products which were really fit to the development stages of babies. So 0 to first month to 6 months, 6 months to 12 months. And it was really, that was one key thing. So really product development. Second one was advertising.
That's always, I think.
That's always, but it's very important. We will see. That's about the value proposition that a product can deliver. I have to look something up because I have other examples. I know that Pampers example is really a mind-blowing one, but that's really the job to be done, if you want. That is behind this product, and it influenced a lot. Another example from technology. Very recent one. I mean, we're doing a project right now on this. Technology makes suddenly things possible. Okay, we agree. There was this technology which is called mobile technology. suddenly you can do stuff on the mobile which you couldn't do before. So how do banks embrace this technology? Banks, they have just gone from non-online to online. That happened about 10 years ago. And now comes mobile technology. So what do? They take the online technology and put it onto mobile. So basically they replicate what is online, because that's pretty much close to mobile, and they put it on mobile. And then they realize, okay, it's not adopted. Consumers, users, are not using it the way we anticipated. I mean, they don't do payments. But what's the job? What could be a job, a higher meaning behind mobile? When you do then job interviews and job to be done interviews and observations and so, you realize that there are people who go on the account every day, a couple of times a day. They always look at their account. So what's the job behind? Why do they do this? What's the meaning? It's the same behavior than a child does when he gets the pig. How do you call this? The piggy bank. And then sometimes looks, is it still there? So that's the job behind it, probably. Huh? And knowing this, that mobile fulfills another role than online banking, can be very, very insightful and very important for product development, for communication, for the future roadmap of the products, because you have to bring users along. So that's an example. I have more. I mean, basically in all the projects we try to reframe it and try to find the larger meaning behind it, which guides then afterwards product development or communication or strategy. Yeah? So don't apply job to be done functionally is the key message. Apply it in a larger sense. And we have afterwards a tool that you could use, try to use for your startup. I mean, this is also not new, this higher meaning. I mean, we're talking about communication a lot. Communication is very important. Communication creates reality. There is very famous examples of communications which happened in the 60s and the 70s, which changed the meaning of a product, which changed the role of a product in people's life. And the concept that the advertising industry created was called the consumer insight, and that was really that is the word that is used in advertising, and it's about reframing the role of a product in the people's life. The first one documented was I mean, you know what this is? Marlboro. Huh? So cigarettes, I mean, a strange product. We can ask what it is, what's the role of this product, was suddenly reframed with the Marlboro Man. And if you think about this symbol, what does it mean? You know, what's the job behind? It can be survival in a dangerous world, and the cigarette plays this role. Yeah. So that is probably the reason why it is successful. And this created billions of this innovation, if you want, created billions. I mean, if a company that you know is still alive because of this. Which is the company? Apple. It was aired once, this ad. And it reframed Apple as a brand, because the product changed as a brand totally differently, and probably Apple survived because of this ad. Think different. Huh? Don't think Microsoft. Don't think different. And that's probably, that's the reframing that happened.
Not think differently.
Huh? About
In English, it's think differently.
think differently. Yeah. Think differently. Sorry. Yeah.
No, but so it is think different. But that isn't. I mean, they on purpose made a mistake in the English to make it think different.
Yeah. They made. Yeah. This is true. Yeah. That is
Nike.
Nike.
Yes, sir.
That's another example. So there was a technology, which was the air technology, that was as good as bad as Adidas. I mean, it was just a technology. Adidas was saying, we have the best running shoes. Look, even the German team, who just won the championship, uses it. So it must be a good product. But the insight was the job that a user wants to achieve is, I want to be professional. I want to be like a professional. I want to, my ambition is to be like a professional runner. Just do it. That was the promise of Nike. So communication, yes, I mean, it can be very important, but it also guides product development.
I think it's strange to have the Marlboro Man and the Apple next to each other, because whereas the Marlboro Man sort of reframed the product, the Apple ad didn't reframe the product.
No.
There, the idea and the product came first, and that was just one sort of manifestation of the core idea.
Yeah.
And X million would have looked the same way,
Yeah.
because the idea at the core was there already.
Yep,
But
agree.
Whereas at the Marlboro Man, I think it's very much the other way around.
There, absolutely agree. Also in the Nike, it was the product was there. Nike was a very small brand in the US. But the product was there. Yeah? So think about value proposition, think about communication more than just the ads you see. It's really the value that is proposed. I mean, a value proposition is a value that you propose to the market, to new customers. So that's communication plays in. Yeah?
They point out this in terms of social job.
Yeah?
So you said before that there's no emotional job, but you use the social job as part of your framework?
Yes. Next.
Okay. Because this is typically
That's another crazy one which goes on, which is difficult to understand. So what's the job behind? Do you know this? It's the same company, service retailer. So your life, do you remember that there are some jobs behind it that are very, okay, you can call them emotional, but then, I mean, they are just, if they hit a nail, it becomes emotional. It creates love, suddenly, or anger. Okay, so we define job as helps to create something that people will perceive as valuable and meaningful. And the something is strategies, products, services, stories, and that's really how we use job to be done, and how our clients use job to be done. Okay, this is a bit crowded, but these are typical client problems, and maybe some of them you have as well. So these innovation strategy and concepts where we use job to be done, like the future food concept. How will people nurture themselves in the future? That's so the job is to provide food to my family, basically to feed my family, and to provide food to myself, to feed myself. So that's the starting point. And from there, we look for the larger meaning. And we show you afterwards what we do with it. Or, another example is technology adoption. I just mentioned it, mobile phone. Technology, there's so many technology coming around the corner. How do you adopt it? Now blockchain. Everyone talks about blockchain. Okay, but how do you put it into a product that is really afterwards valuable and meaningful to customers? Internet of Things. I just had a discussion with a Siemens Bosch, and he was very proud talking about cameras in the fridge and knowing how many eggs are in there and so on. Now you can, is that meaningful or not? What's the job behind it? What's the real job behind where this serves? Do shopping. And what's the solution that we have today to do shopping? Normally, you just make a list. Does it really address it? Innovation roadmap and project sharpening, that's a key application for, in my view, for startups, is you have so many ideas in technology, you can go so many directions and add features and develop, and which is the one that you have to put your eggs on. And Jobs to be Done can help you, can guide you in this. And the last one is value proposition and positioning. What's the message behind it? Yeah? So that's typically example. Strategy, project innovation, roadmaps, adoption of technology with the aim to disrupt the market, of course, and value proposition. How are we doing? So key message is job to be done is more. Look for the larger meaning. We have we found it very useful to think on 3 different levels. We look for the bigger why behind, so we look for jobs that express the bigger why. We look for jobs that express the deeper why, what are the drivers behind it, and there the social and so on comes in. And we look at the lower how. We use a framework, and you can use that as well, a framework along all the 4 steps of a CFI project. In the framing phase, we ask ourselves what's the level of altitude we have to go in. Sometimes the level of altitude is quite high, sometimes it's quite low. Yeah?
Is it exemplify the previous slide? Just with Pampers or whatever?
The Pampers. So the lower how, I mean, what's the core job is I would say, starting point, I haven't done a job study on Pampers, I was just working on it. But keep baby dry, keep parents happy, keep baby happy, that would be the core job. What's the higher, the bigger why of the parents, because the parents buy the product, is make them successful, basically. Grow the kids, develop them. And the lower how is then, how do you do it? Which are really, it starts with recognize, basically know that something is wrong with the baby. No? There are different signals why a baby, do you have a child? No? Why a baby has, why it's time to change the Pampers. And for an engineer, this is very clear, when it stinks. But the mother knows already much before that. So it's really going through this step by step and trying to find the how. How do they do it? How do they recognize baby needs to change diapers? What's next? What's next? It's very close to user journeys, And the trick is not to be too close to the solution. So not saying opening the diaper, because that's a solution.
On the Pampers example, on the 3 slides, you have Pampers and you have Huggies. So how is Huggies different from Pampers in the value proposition? Any other brand that you're aware of?
Huggies was not using this insight. As simple as that. The difference was that Huggies was not using this insight and Pampers was using it. Huggies was catching up on technology. Pampers had a lead, but Huggies was catching up. And so the question is, you can do technology innovation, and they did that, but in what direction? And you can do meaning innovation. So you change the meaning. And Pampers was changing the meaning. And of course, this also led to technology innovation. And Huggies was blind. And that's really the key. You have to know where to go, and then if the other ones don't know, you basically beat them.
No, because I personally didn't see a big difference because the advertising for one is more expensive than the other one was.
Yeah.
But in terms of different sizes, children growing up, families and where it's all similar.
Yeah, sure. It was copy. It was. They copied, but market share of Pampers when I was there was 60%. Huggies was 20%. 20% were private labels. price of Pampers was like 10-15% higher, it's good business if you can defend it. Okay, but let's use this. So we start with a core job. And it's very simple. We start at the beginning without even talking to the users. Just common sense, very simple. What could be the core job? What are jobs upstream and downstream? Then we think about hypothesis of higher jobs, and we think about the job journey. How could it go? Very inside out, very hypothesis driven. We are at this stage, framing. The deeper why is safety and survival jobs. That's what you just mentioned. Social jobs, social exchange. We take a bit of Maslow here, you know, Maslow pyramid, and we apply it to jobs to be done. But you can take another framework. We just found it interesting, but not as a pyramid, but we say, okay, there are safety jobs, keep safe, know that someone is safe. Social exchange job, which is basically communicating. Recognition jobs, being valued, being applauded. And then this self-reward or self-actualization job. That's a framework, but you can take another one. Maybe it doesn't apply to your... And but we know that there is more than just a function. That's what it says. So then we make a hypothesis, then we go into discovery, and in discovery we talk to users, like in design thinking or user. We talk to them, and we test this hypothesis, and we dig deeper. We really do this laddering, why, what drives you, and we don't stop with the first answer. And try to establish this map or this job hierarchy in a more outside-in way. Yeah?
Not familiar with what is upstream jobs and downstream jobs?
Okay, when you start at some point, let's put it differently. A day has 1,440 minutes. When you do something, you do something before and you do something afterwards. And maybe the things you do before has to do with the things you do now. So the classic example from Alvik is Sony was the inventor of the Discman, Walkman, and so on, but they lost the iPod, basically, the MP3. They lost it. Apple was not the first MP3 player. But Apple understood what happens before and what happens afterwards. So that the steps before, put these songs onto your MP3, was quite a challenge at the time. You don't remember, but everything was illegal. You downloaded it illegal. You had viruses on it. So it was a problem. While in the Sony world, it was very easy. You go to the store, you buy CD discs, and you have them. And afterwards, the job downstream was also, okay, I have now 5,000 songs on this little thing. How do I find them? Not quite a challenge. So they created a whole system with iTunes. That's an old example.
How about things like buying and maintaining and all these things around the product?
Yeah, we hardly
cleaning your coffee machine or something is.
We do buying. We don't. We try to avoid. I mean, it's not about the purchase decision. Most of our projects are not about the actual purchase decision in the store or on the internet, but they are about use of the product. And we assume, and that's a hypothesis, that if the use of the product is great, then they will also buy it.
Like Nespresso, it sort of seems that part of it was all the experience of it's the purchasing, it's the stores, it's these. It's almost more about the buying.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. But yeah, sometimes we do it when the buying is, when the client pushes us or when we feel it has a role to play.
Or Dyson, where you don't have to change the bags. I mean, that's part of.
But that's maintenance. Maintenance we do. Maintenance is clearly part of the usage. And when you do business to business, maintenance can be the core focus of it. So it can all be about maintenance. Alstom was about gas power station and coal power station. And let's say gas power station, this is all about operating and maintain this thing. And it's more maintain, because the gas power station runs, never runs. Let's put it like this. A gas power station is just there in standby and it never runs. So it has to be perfectly maintained. And when the grid goes down, the gas has to go up, the gas station has to go up immediately, instantly, and provide energy. So they are just load balancing, it's called. So it's all about maintenance.
I have a startup that does a wearable device for identification, and I'm bringing them into fleet management.
Yeah?
Because the fleet management will be more important to the B2B person than the science and the technology behind the actual device.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that's a tool. The tool is really bigger Y, lower how, deeper Y. Helps you to go 360 degrees. Let's show an example. Okay, I have a consumer goods example again and a finance example, but the consumer goods example, that was for Beiersdorf, Nivea.
Just a quick question. There was this frame, disc, spin. Was that I didn't pitch that. The bottom there, stick?
Disc, spin. Oh, that's our framework. That's basically the phases we go through, and we think it should be gone through. It's first you frame the business problem from a job to be done perspective. So there is a business problem. Say we want to grow market share, or we want to introduce our product into the market. That's a business that has nothing to do with the user. Now, how could this be framed from a user perspective? That's the framing. Who are the users? So that's strategy stuff, and who are the users needs to be clarified. Discovery, that's two things. That's exploration. So very similar to design thinking or agile. So you talk to users, but solution free. And the second element to it is validation. So we do quite a bit of outside-in validation, quantification. And this can also be done to a certain extent by startups. And spin is then, when the results are in, it's basically the customer understanding or user understanding is in, we spin the strategy, or we spin the product development, we orient the product development towards these insights that we gained. And stick is make it stick, so that can be develop a product when it's really about developing new products, or very often we hear in recent days transformation. So every company is now in digital transformation, and it's a lot about people and change management and things. So that's why we call it stick. So this is like our systematic way. So let's make an example again. How much time do we have, Jonathan?
We have until 9:30. It's 26 past 8.
Okay, so are you bored, or is it okay? So remember, you have to start somewhere. Where is the core job? This was after exploration, but we started somehow like this: take care of my skin. This is very, very functional, to take care of my skin. And women are doing this, and men also, but this was for women. So take care of my skin. And then we explored and we found something higher up. Define my personality, we called it, and we heard that from consumers. I'm defining my personality. I'm portraying my identity through appearance, through the way I look. And suddenly it's not just about skincare, but it's also about hair. Hair is very important. It's about clothes. It's about accessories. So suddenly the solution for the job above, there are different solutions for the job above. So this can go that way. Then there is another example. Stay financially independent for a bank. So, okay, these were normal people, normal wealth, middle class. So be financially independent. So we put the financially into brackets and say, okay, what's higher up? To live a self-determined life. And finance, money is important for this, but health is also important for this. Lifestyle, career. So suddenly other other jobs, sub-jobs, other product categories play into the same job, higher job. So it can really help you understand competition. We helped to design the FIFA football museum in Zurich. They came and said, we want to create a museum. We said, museum is not good, it's boring. What's the job you try to achieve? And then users were families and singles, friends, we called them, friends and families. So what are families doing? What's the job that they try to achieve? Spend time together as a family. Now, what's the competition? It's going to the movies, going to somewhere, no? And suddenly the competition is totally different than what they thought in the beginning. They were always benchmarking them against art museums and other football museums, and we changed that perspective. And it is now more an entertainment park than a museum. Yeah?
To rank the different jobs, or does it even matter? Like when you define that, do that, with these different jobs, does it make sense to rank them? Like one is really much more important than
it could make sense, yes. It could make sense if this is really the question, the business question. So if it's really a strategy question of where do we want to play, what's the job, the overarching job we want to address, it can be very useful to quantify this, because it tells you where to play. But many companies are stuck in their business model, and they would never think about going into healthcare. A bank would never think about going into healthcare. But maybe it's important for a bank to know that health is also relevant. So then, okay, go back to skincare. What is before, what is afterwards? Huh? So you can, here we took the day. So you wake up, that's the first thing you do. Then check how I look. So people watch into the mirror, and women, and they check how do they look, how does the skin look. So that's a first step that is important, and they assess, okay, I look, it's different when I have just went out the night before, drank till 2 o'clock in the morning, smoked a lot of cigarettes, and then I look in the mirror, it's different than when it's an easy day. So that's where it starts. Then there are different options, and then it goes into the care process, and then afterwards you go to work, they go to shopping, they go to a party, dinner. These are other jobs. They enjoy compliments. Huh? And here also, and we haven't showed this, is the deeper why. Why are they doing this? And it could be safety and health, for example. Health could be healthy skin. It could be social, so that other people like me. No, that's very important here. And if you think about purpose of skincare, it's being liked, and less, yeah. So we also look at this other things behind. And then we go down the deeper how, and we really explore what they do. So they assess, that's the mirror thing, they prepare the skin, they apply, they let the effect unfold. There is a first effect, and then there is a longer lasting effect, which is difficult to measure, but they still do. Yeah?
So there you're in the solution then.
We try to avoid, what we say is we try to be on this level, we try to be solution free. So take container is not good. Huh? That's clearly pointing towards a solution. But sometimes you have to be pragmatic, because packaging packaging is important, and if they want to stay in creams, then probably do it. But the mandate was also look beyond creams. So we had a lot of things that was really without creams. It was about Botox, the solution to it, food. Yeah.
If even the lower how stays away from function or
Solution.
then what does it include? Because my view, or as I understood until now, the how is really what is done, and that really is very reliant and
Yeah.
tightly linked
Yeah.
with the solution.
You
And
ca-
just like as you
yeah.
said, like the take container, like I apply things. Well, that means that you have a product. Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, if not in the lower how is near the solution, then the whole thing becomes really very philosophical in my view.
It can, but we try. Let's take an example: software. So you can ask, okay, you look for this icon, and then you press the icon, and then it starts up. So that's the solution, huh? Or you can, and then when you explore further, and you ask, what do you want to achieve? They said, okay, I want that there are no steps, no manual steps to start the software. Now the manual steps is now solution free, but the software is still solution. So you see what I mean? You try to zoom into this startup process of a software, and you find out what is really the problem. Yeah? And they say, okay, I can't find the icon. It takes me too much time to start it up. And then you have a metric to tell you, solution free, what it's all about. What's the problem? That's the next. It's exactly this metric. It's this next step. So the job, we try to be solution free, but not. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work. We try to be on this level solution free, but in the end, if the business is software, then we somehow have to play to it. If the business is a bank, it's a bank. But we try to put it away.
And in this case, to take care of my skin, is that so what level is that? Is that the higher Y? Because it seems to me that as you're saying, this is a lower how, but you say it needs to be solution free. To me, that feels a bit like it's pulled too high up because it's not tangible enough. But to take care of my skin in those terms feels to me too pulled down, because actually I want to look healthy or I want to feel good.
Yeah.
So to take care of my skin, is that supposed to be the higher Y, or is that just
No, that was really the core.
Mhm.
But that's exactly the problem. The problem you run into with job to be done is where is it? And there is no one answer. It's you can argue it's too high, but then you immediately are in the lower how and close to the solution. Or you can argue it's too low, and then you go up. But when you go into health, you might get lost. Now they were open to this, and we looked at concepts that were about food. They said food is something we can look at, or medical things. Yeah.
Let's separate. How do you deal with user segmentation? Like you have that many types of, when you observing, you see that there are patterns. Groups A, B, C, and D acting differently. How do you put that in frame?
Now, in the exploration phase, when we talk to a small set of users, 20 typically, 15 to 25, and we try to have normal ones and extremes. But we try to have a good mix, let's say. When we go into validation, we discover the segments through the validated results. So we ask observable criteria like social demographics, and then we measure what we call pain points, I'll show it afterwards, against it, and we say, okay, this men have these pain points and female have these pain points, and they're totally different. So probably two segments.
And you redo a whole screen for each of the segments, or you try
No,
to
we have the same frame. We have the same frame and the same list for all the segments. We don't have another one. This is for one type of user, but the users are not segmented. They are consumers or users, so it's not too narrow. And when you go into other categories, for example, medtech. In medtech, you have doctors, nurses, patients, even health insurance companies. So you have different stakeholders, but they all have different jobs. A nurse has a different job than a physician, no? And therefore they have different maps, different hierarchies. And this can blow up a job to be done project, because you suddenly have 4 different groups, and it's too complex. But we just did a study in the US with nurses and physicians, and it was beautiful, because the pain points, then there were clear common pain points and there were separate pain points. So it allowed to do a value proposition for the common with specific solutions for the doctors and the nurses. But we are just, I mean, this is just the preparation. This is where it starts, yeah?
I had a question around the segmentation, because my understanding was that the segmentation in jobs to be done, the job is the unit of analysis, and so I don't know if you were asking about this, if there's different job for different, like each segment has a different job, and I just wanted to respond to that, because I think, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, is that you segment based on for one job, but for people have different outcomes they want from a job, and those are the segments. Is this?
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to think about we call it user group. No? The user group, and there's one big user group, and in the user group there are segments, but these segments are different from the outcomes or the value metrics, how we call them. How do they respond then to the validation? It's not possible, if you talk to 20 users, to segment based on these databases. It's not possible. It's you can. That's what's been wrong in Lean and all this. It's only when you start to be above 30 or 40 or 60, the patterns start to be relevant.
Sure, but for a company, it could use common sense, like a man is quite different from a woman. You could say that.
So here it was clear.
But a 10-year-old girl would be different from a 80-year-old girl.
So in exploration, there were about 20 or 25 women that was defined, not for men, for women. Different age groups. So there was a mix of different age groups. There was a criteria. They were all in Germany, and there was a kind of a criteria, kind of lifestyle. We wanted to have people who had a wilder lifestyle and noble lifestyle. So, but who smoked, for example, before, or drink alcohol, and so we did, but that was a definition. That's you have to define it. Yeah.
You just mentioned that the patterns start emerging when you have developed 30, 40, 50 people that you've interviewed, or and I'm just wondering, because in sort of software testing, there's often sort of this number that from about when you talk with 5 people, then you pretty much have 80% of your problems identified. It's the remaining 20% that you can sort of get on there, but the value of one interview sort of starts diminishing already very low.
Absolutely, but that's not pattern recognition. That is exploration. So if you talk to 5 people from the same group, you get probably about 60-70% of the metrics. We call them metrics. If you talk to 20, you get up to 95%. Huh? But it's not the pattern. Then you look for the. I first have to explain this first, and then it becomes clearer, because this hierarchy is just the first step. That's just the basis. That's the starting point. Once we have this, we dig deeper. We go into each step and look for very specific metrics. How to find out how consumers or users are feeling, are evaluating how the job is done. Only then it starts. So and we need this very concrete and large extent of metrics, because if you give a developer a brief and say develop something convenient, he will develop something that is convenient for him and not for the user. That's a bit the problem. So we try to get this bias out of the picture and have the concrete insight. So what do we do? So we ask about a job. We start with a job step. one on the list. It can be higher up or lower up, and then we trigger stories, problems. There are not so many. I mean, it can take time, it can take steps, it can lead to a wrong result or a good result. Sometimes, sometimes good result, sometimes it doesn't work. Be sure that something is happening. So we're triggering stories. This is an example from a doctor, and through the questioning, there were these stories about, amongst doctors, it's quite common to ask, how many charts are you behind today? A chart is a patient record where they write basically down, and they're constantly behind on the charts, and they say it like this. I used to work the documentation after work. That was horrible. It takes me more and more time now. I try to finish the documentation before moving on to the next patient. No? So we try to trigger these stories, and then based on these stories we work with the respondents to phrase a statement, a metric, we call it, a value metric. For example, here it was to have to work overtime as rarely as possible to catch up on the documentation. So these statements, Tony calls them outcomes, Christensen calls them hiring criteria. Tony has defined what it is. It has a clear syntax, a bit complicated one, a bit odd one, but it is defined. Christensen has not defined it. He just talks about hiring criteria, and we have also defined it. We say it has 3 elements. First element is the result you obtain or the result you want to avoid. That's the key. What do you want to obtain or achieve, or what do you want to avoid? And here you can take out the solution. What you want to achieve with pressing a button is that there are as few steps as possible. So you want to have, or that it takes as little time as possible. So, until the software, or until you can start work, let's say. So the result is you want to start work. The unit is as little time as possible, and then there is maybe a context that you put in. So that's what we try to do. And by talking to 5 users, we get about 60% of these all possible statements, and there are about 120. And if we talk to 20 users, we systematically get 200 of these statements. And they are all written in this format, and they're all put into the job hierarchy where they belong to. So it's hard work, but it's key, because each one of them can be a great insight, and can be a specification for product development. It can be a business idea on its own. But when you talk to 20, you had 200 of these statements. You don't know which of these statements is important or relevant. You don't know, because only one. If one user says it, you take it. But you don't know. If 5 users say the same thing, you still don't know if it's relevant, because there can be 15 others or 25 others who don't say it. That's just science. And that's where lean is dangerous, because lean tries to iterate quickly with the hope that the iteration will lead to the right result. But it can take a long time. So that's why we are lean. We try to be lean, but at the same time we have to be careful. So that's the value metric. ODI calls them outcomes and hiring criteria, and they are very important. Just about the units, you know units, kilometers per hour. So to drive a car, kilometers per hour, that's a unit. How fast? You can rephrase that, and that it takes as little time as possible until you arrive. Clicks per order, that's a known metric in software. But you can also say number of fearful moments when you drive in a car. You know, this happens. There are these moments of fear happening, and the context when you drive yourself, or when it's raining, or when you are a passenger, that can be different. So these units, you have to be creative with the units, but it works. It works, and that's how it's judged. We did car studies. That's how they talk. You know, I had this horrible moment, and I thought we crash. How did you feel about it? This was not very good. So is it important for you that during a trip you get as few of these horrible moments as possible? Yeah, I don't want a few, I want none. No? So we have then a scheme in our head where we say, okay, never have a moment. So this is a bit complicated, but that's the scheme we have in our head. It says when you do something, when it is a job step, what's the result you wish to obtain or avoid? What's the unit you apply? And what's the context? What's the context? That's what we have in our mind when we do these interviews. Yeah? And so we build it up. So we know that 30 interviews we get 100% of the metrics. We don't learn anything new. We do the 31st interview, nothing new. It even starts at 10, 12. Huh? Suddenly you have an interview, you didn't learn anything new. So we know that the curve is flattening. And then we systematically write them down. Now, can this work in startup environment? We believe it, yes, but it needs discipline. Huh? And having a list of 100 of these metrics, you don't have to go to 200, but 100 of very concrete metrics can be very inspiring. And you can, even if you don't validate it, you can make a bet and say that's it, and you go out and you do testing, you do prototyping, and you realize, okay, we've talked to five users, they all confirmed it's probably right. It's all about probability. Sometimes you don't have the time to do more.
Do some kind of clustering of all these things?
Yeah, they're all clustered. They're all clustered along this. They're all clustered. Where is it? Based on this. No? So each of these metric is either here, or here, or here, or here, or higher. And it's tracked. And then we take it, and we take the 200, we reduce it down to 100 max. We might rewrite this, but we put it basically in a questionnaire, and we do an online survey or a telephone. Most of the time we do phone, and we let it rate. We let real users rate it. That's market research practice. That's how ODI does it. We just do it a bit different. So we ask them each of these metrics, how important is it to you? And they rate, and they say important. If it's really important, they give a 5. If it's not, it's very important, a 4. Not so important, a 3. And then we ask the same on fulfillment. So this is German because I put it in today, but this is fulfillment, satisfaction. So we ask, how satisfied are you? And they say, I'm totally happy, totally satisfied, 5, and so on. And then we map the two, and basically what we can say, if it's on this side, we can say 100% of the users in this group find it important, and if it's here only on 2, we say, okay, 20% only are satisfied, therefore it's a pain point. And an opportunity for innovation. And this is when you read ODI, you see this, but ODI has, in our view, a flaw. ODI simply states that everything underneath here, on this side, is our pain points. They basically draw a line here from 5 up to there, and they say all this is our pain points. We agree that they are all pain points, but we have done studies where you get in 2 countries different clouds. In France, for example, The clouds tend to be more to the left than in Germany. So it's relative, and why is this? Our hypothesis is the French school system. In the French school system you never get a 10, therefore you never give a 10. Therefore everything is like kind of to the left.
12 out of 20 is the best grade.
Exactly. So that means that you have to look at it relatively. You don't have to look at it in absolute terms how ODI does it. There we're pretty convinced because we've done comparison, and we clearly saw the same pain points in France and in Germany, but the cloud in Germany was to the left, more to the left, and the one in France was more to the left than the one in Germany. But the insights were the same. And we think we have to look at it relatively. So if you have this list of 100, they are rated somehow to each other on importance, and this gives a relative reading. Can you do this as a startup? On a smaller scale, yes. We did it for Doodle. You know Doodle. It's just pragmatic. They had their users and they had non-users, and they did a mailing, an online, maybe a simplified list, not 100 statements, but 50, and get a kind of a reading on it. And that's better than just... And it's market research, basic market research, which is very old, but the key is the exploration is done differently than.
Can you maybe clarify what each point represents?
Each point is a value metric or an outcome. So there are about 100 of these value metrics on this graph. And this was done with 192 users or people, and it was done for the FIFA Museum, and there were very interesting insights. Quite often we get the result. We knew this before. It's clear. I mean, this is basic. And then we asked them, yeah, but why don't you do something about it? So, in a museum, toilet is always a problem. You have two toilet problems. One is women and men. So the women toilet is always overloaded, and the male toilet is always empty. So they were building it, and we said, okay, hey, what's your plan? And there were 50-50 split. Trivial, basics, get the basics right.
Unisex toilets, that's the
so we had quite a bit of basics. Locker, so wardrobe. You put wardrobe system or locker system. So today people come. It's not coats anymore. They come with bags and things like this. And then also insights, for example, real things that are higher up. For example, leaving a place like this. Now, before you have all the excitements going up and down, then you leave it and it makes. So there is this frustration of we just had a great time. Afterwards, what happens? Nothing, and they don't take care of you afterwards. That's a typical upward job. So how can you manage to travel home from the museum home? How can you celebrate this? How can you do more value there? Because it was a frustration point. Yeah.
How much, I don't know how well users are able to answer without which bias the thing. But I see usually it's 1 to 10 for 7. So, and how much through observation would be able to actually have remove such bias or introduce more? But is there, and you do it a bit with these two steps, like the first step is observation. How much is that different than if you were doing more observation with more people, or is it so usually it's marginal the difference that hey, don't care?
I mean, in our experience, and some people don't like this, but we think with observation you gain something. There's no doubt about it. But observation, ethnography, is always combined with interviewing. So they always observe a behavior and then they ask. Huh? We sometimes we do home visits, but sometimes budget does not allow to do observation. It's simply too expensive. We worked for farmers, for Syngenta. I mean, the job was to grow crop, and that starts in January and that then ends in December. So that's the full job. You cannot observe. So sometimes observation is very expensive or even not possible. We sometimes, I mean, we think, we claim that with our interviews we get almost as much out of an interview than out of an observation. That's a claim. We cannot prove it, but we have some evidence. We did, for example, for a car. It was about seats, car seats, and if you drill, you get suddenly this funny behavior that you would observe. So people get into a car, and then you ask, so what's the first thing you do? And then they start the engine and say, no, stop. Let's start again. Okay, you open the door. Okay, solution. You open the door. What do you do next? Well, no, I open the back door. Why do you open the back door? Because I have my bag. And then you start to discover things that you would observe. They open the back door and then they put the bag in the back. So you can achieve quite a bit via drilling. But if of course, sometimes you miss. But it's not about perfect solutions, it's about good enough solutions. And we believe the trade-off between interviews and observations sometimes not justified.
Did you use gyros or cameras for the medium, like you ask participants to the actual day, what they're doing?
Diaries.
Do you find this
Yeah, we used it, but not extensively. And I think it's a great tool. I think it can be useful. But again, it's the same question. Okay, you ask to do the diaries. They write something down. It can be interesting, and then you have to analyze the thing. At our time, if you work for a bank, it's expensive, so we charge money for it, and then suddenly doesn't fly. But as a startup, for example, yes, it could be a good tool. We do forums. We go into forums and we do analysis of forums. What do they discuss? So what are the topics? But we prefer to have the face-to-face or Skype interviews or so. Yeah? The key is you have to separate. There is exploration and there is validation. You can do only exploration and then make a guess. That's okay. If you don't have the money for this, it's okay. It's always still better than do nothing. Yeah? But when you do exploration, do it the job to be done way. That's our message. Try to get the solution out. Try to think the bigger why, the lower how, the deeper why. Really open up. Put yourself into the job perspective and don't ask your solution. Don't go in there and say, unless you do quick prototyping, but if you want just to discover, then you go in there and say, what do you want to achieve? What's the job you want to achieve? What do you do? How do you do it? What goes wrong? What takes time? What's annoying? What's great? And there you discover. And never go in and say, we have this great solution. We think you want to know how you find it. You're so biased. You want to hear it's great. And you hear it will be great. And then you launch it and it will. Okay? So there are tons of analysis. Don't have to go in it. But what we want to share in the last 15 minutes is a bit about these debates that are going on, because there are a lot of debates going on, and we also Twitter and participate sometimes. We think some of these debates are silly. There is, for example, the origin debate, so they discuss who started it. Okay, you can debate it. We have a point of view. It was Levitt. And none of the other ones but it's silly. No? Then there is the innovation debate. That's not silly, but innovation is much more than job to be done. I mean, it's about the innovation strategy. It's about building an innovation culture. It's about selecting the right ideas. Maybe now job to be done comes in the way we do it or the way ODI does it. But innovation is really a big topic. Even do they want to be innovation leaders, companies, or do they want to be followers? Innovation is risk. So you have CEOs saying we have to innovate, but then they don't take the risk to innovate. There's no budget. So there's a really, the debate is big. And job to be done can help, partly. We really focus on the purpose debate. What's the purpose of job to be done? Which aspects of the jobs to be done theories help to do successful innovation and why? And I think that's where the debate should be. And so the question is, from a business point of view, from a C-level point of view, if you want, they want to be assured, that's a value metric, to be assured as possible that what you do or what you plan to do will later be perceived and rewarded by the customer. That's almost like a value metric we use. That's what they want. They want to have more security and confidence of what they do will later on be a success or not. That's the way to judge it. And we have this. We took three. We took Christensen. There's the milkshake marketing, or the latest book. It's about competing with luck, competing against luck, and it's all about give security. That's at least the title. When you look into the book, you discover maybe something else. Then there is Tony Alvig. Tony Alvig has an 85-step process, which you see in this framework. ODI is a good tool. It has some good principles, and some which we think we can bring something to it. And Molesta is coming. He's more focusing on switch interviews, and he's more focused. He's not a complete process. We are more an open source thing. So we try to take the best, evaluate and try to take the best and fit it in. And jobs to be done is an important part of it, but we also borrow from other concepts. So what do you think, to what extent do they answer this question? How do they give security and confidence to a business so that what they do will be perceived as valuable later on? That's the question. I think Christensen job to be done thinking gains new insights about the bigger why. Christensen is really about the bigger why or the other why. So the milkshake is not just to feed you or to make you full, but it's about, if you know it, about a boring trip to work of 2 hours and keeps you busy. So that's like a bigger why or another why. So that's where he's good. And he has, in his new book, some great examples of these bigger whys, and it can be really inspiring. He's a bit general and fuzzy. He never tells how to do it, and that's a bit a critique. Job to be done is presented to you. Also, Osterwalder, he says job to be done is great, but then how to do it? It's kind of, you think it's great, but then you try to apply it and it doesn't work, or it becomes complicated. So he's a bit. There's no guidance about how to frame it, how to explore, how to do this exploration. We've never seen anything about quantification. Maybe he does it, or InnoSight is the company. Maybe they do it, but it's not published. Then Alvig is he's really strong in defining and creating definitions and step by step. He has a crystal clear view of what jobs to be done is in his sense. He documents it well. He's the one who's marketing himself really best in the web. And he clearly separates job and solution. He's very strict on this, which we feel also important. Sometimes he's rigorous and inflexible. So when you want to apply it to a startup or when we apply it to our clients, it's simply not possible to do it in this strict way. He has a way to write the metrics, the outcomes, sometimes a bit artificial. He uses this minimize word, which is not a natural word. We think our way of phrasing it is equally precise but more natural, and he's not really agile and too much. But read the books. I mean, he's giving you very good guidance. Then we have Moesta. I mean, you know Moesta better than I do, but I read his Twitters and he always saying, I'm landing from Tokyo and I was just in this bar. But I think he really focuses on these switch interviews, and switch in itself is a contradiction, because we believe it's not solution free. So he wants to understand why users switch from one solution to the next one. And that's an interesting question, yes? But maybe it's a bit confusing or conflicting with the job to be done logic. And he has really this focus. Yeah?
If you want to read one book and you take The Jobs to be Done by Ulrich, I mean, that'll give you a pretty good start on how to
I would say so.
And then if you really want to go up a higher level, you need a lot of work.
Oh, you talk to us? No, he's dogmatic. I mean, he's quite dogmatic, and rightly so. He says that's the way, that's ODI, and everything else is not ODI. That's his business model.
I went from 17 to 84% success rate on innovation.
Okay, that's yeah. It's good marketing. Yeah. I mean, we are open source. We take what we think is good. No? So, I mean, to put it simple, I think Christensen is the bigger why, Ulrich is the lower how. And yeah, the deeper why, I mean, we are also developing. The deeper why is something that is new, rather new, about 6 months old. And it's not sometimes clear what's the difference between bigger why and deeper how. And is there another why than just the bigger why? So I'm open here. I mean, that's why CFI is a constant development, and with every project we learn. Yeah, but we did. The principles, I think, are stable behind it. Job to be done is a great principle, and exploration, validation, 2 steps is a great principle. Solution free is a great principle, but in the application sometimes difficult. Don't think just product, but think value proposition, including communication that can make a difference. Yeah. Okay, that's the framework we shared already. That's it. Huh? That's the end of it. Yeah?
If you have questions, go ahead.
Go ahead with the questions. Yeah?
What's the state of the industry now? So how many companies are using job to be done principles deeply inside of their product strategy management? What's your feeling on it?
1%. Very few. Job to be done is I will tell you a story. No one was talking about job to be done, neither in Europe nor in the US. It was really very niche. It was a secret sauce. And we were doing it, but we were not talking about it. We were just using the principle. And then we got a call from the D School. Stanford. The D School is design thinking. They have 2 legs, one in Stanford and one in Berlin. And some guys from the D School in Berlin called us and said, we found out that you do jobs to be done. We think it's a great concept for design thinking. We said, okay. And then we talked with them. And they still think it's a great concept. But what we found out is that in Berlin, which is one of the hotspots of startups, they have a job to be done meetup, like here, and they have a mailing list. And on this mailing list, there are 1,000 names. And that was 2 or 3 years ago. And one guy who was there went to London to work on for another employer. So he started a job to be done there. And then at the same time, and probably even before, you had Osterwalder's value proposition book coming out, where he talked jobs to be done. So since then, the last 3 years, this has come up. And now we have companies who come to us and say, we want to do jobs to be done. So we make a project. But this is like a hype. This will go down again. You know, today we're selling jobs to be done, but tomorrow it will be forgotten. But the concept is still good. The concept is great. It doesn't mean that if a hype stops, that it's wrong. Yeah.
I have a question on how this more theoretical respiratory part then translates into the practice. So I was quite proud that I introduced sort of the user story point of approaching something which is solution independent, or that was my goal as well, because what our partners were coming to us was like, we wanted to do this, like, let's take a step back, why do we want that?
Yeah.
And what we did on one specific one is that we wanted to do this. Okay, we took a step back, this is the user story, and then we went to the developers and actually came up with something that exactly what sort of the agreed sort of stories are, but for a fraction of the cost and time. And we presented that we could do this, turn it on, it's there tomorrow. And they were still sticking to what they thought the solution should be. Whereas we went all the way back, we agreed, and I think that we did a relatively good job at defining why we actually want to do that. And still, because they thought of the solution first, and now sort of everyone has some understanding of how things work, so they think of how they want to solve it, and they stick to that, how they want to solve it, and they stick to that solution. So any thought on that, or turning that around a bit, because I thought that there's no better way than being able to dial it down and bring the same result with a fraction of the cost and time, and yet it's sort of backfired. So any thought on that?
You fire them and hire other people.
Exactly. They pay the bills.
Yeah, I think the fundamental problem is the biases that human beings have in judgment and decision making. These biases are so strong, and it's so difficult to overcome a bias. There's the confirmation bias is the classic one. Every startup is convinced that his solution is the best, and he thinks 90% or even more time on this solution. And that creates a bias. Now, how to overcome it is really a lot about discipline. It's a lot about this validation, for example. But the validation also, you have to trust the numbers. Not everyone trusts the numbers. You can present. We are in meetings and we present results, facts. Okay, it's a model, but we present data that we think are facts. They look at it and they said, that's what I said all the time, and then he says the contrary, which is on the data. So, I mean, there is this bias that it has to be like this, and if it's not like this, it is not true. So how to overcome it? I mean, that's really the topic of change management, changing people, not in the sense of firing them, but how to... You know, we have an approach that is analytical, fact-based. This plays to, let's say, half of the people. But the other half, they can look at numbers and it doesn't tell them anything. It's the stomach. So that's what you have to play. And then there are other techniques in management, in change, but it's a big question.
And that's a big thing in startups, where you sort of have the solution first.
Yeah.
I love your solution, then you think this has to go to market.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
When you're doing your clients, as far as I'm concerned,
What? When you're
doing with your clients, right? You start usually during the strategy initial phase.
Yeah.
You also then continue to accompany them during the concept and development throughout after the product launch and measuring afterwards how your initial thoughts whether validated or not. And you were saying when I came in for I got you saying don't test, that can be very biased, you might get wrong results, etc. I'm coming from the user experience side, test all the time, and really strongly believe in that, and break results all along the product life cycle. So
I don't say don't test.
that's just what I heard.
No, I mean go out to the users as a startup. Go out to the users, talk to the users right away, even if your solution is not finished. But then go out with the right mindset. So if you are at the beginning of the development, or even in the middle of the development, always go back to the beginning and ask yourself, what's the job, again, that users try to achieve? And go away from the solution. Don't test the solution. But then there are phases where you want to test, where you have to test. Because again, otherwise you are blind, you are biased by yourself. So it's really playing this testing, solution-oriented testing and solution-free approach to discover in a smart way. I mean, design thinking says first you observe. Without a solution, design thinking, the theory is you go out and you discover, you observe.
I think all of you say the same thing, and that's why I get frustrated after a while because I've been listening for a long time. And when I started already, it was the same thing. I mean, we always said we could observe the users, do task analysis, we can call it jobs on tasks.
Yeah.
So, where's the new thing?
There's no new thing. I mean, the new thing is that companies start to talk to users. That's new. That was not the case. That was only the case. Consumer goods has, for the last 40 years, 50 years, they talked to consumers. But in B2B, in banks, in insurance, they were never talking to the consumers. But even worse, they were not knowing that they were not talking to the consumers because they said, hey, we have a customer service department and we have 25,000 calls a year. Hey, we're talking to the consumers. But they're only talking about complaints. Not about the product, about complaints. The industry says, what, we're not talking about with the customers. We have a sales force that is out there every day. They visit 5 clients a day. They're constantly talking to the customers. But a sales guy is the worst person to give you insights about the customer. Because a sales guy will always tell you it's too expensive. What we sell, make it cheaper. Because that makes his job easy. It's very simple. So it's not the right, okay, I'm provocative. I don't take it as a face value, but the direction is right. You don't use salespeople to bring you insights. They are biased. And if you talk to engineers love to work on sexy things, so they will never work on boring things. So they will not bring you, if engineers observe, they will not bring you back boring things. Yeah?
So it's sort of like it's about know what to test at what time.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
at the beginning you're testing the life,
Yeah.
the problem space, and you're not testing the actual. And then it's once you validate that, you go down into test,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you get up until the point where you're actually testing the interaction level of the last detail.
Exactly. This is, I mean, in theory, this is about front end of innovation. It's about at the beginning of the innovation process. You do this, and then you know where the opportunities are, and then you develop the product, and everything is fine. Huh? But this theory never exists. It's always about, hey, we are in the middle of a project and we are not sure. Or we have this innovation pipeline and we have 50 ideas. Companies don't have, they have too many ideas, not too little. Which one to put on? We know blockchain is coming or Internet of Things is coming, but we don't know how to make meaning out of it for our products. It's always about constant running. And then you have to decide, like you said, John, okay, this is the moment to open up and explore and discover the opportunities because it will help us in the next phase. And this is now about quick testing, quick prototyping. We cannot give all the answers with this. So we very often recommend in spin and stick, now you have to do a customer session and do classic user work. Yeah? More? Yeah?
Okay, it's illegal. Have you applied it to your own business?
Huh?
Have you applied the framework to your own business?
Yeah, we constantly try it and we do our mistakes and yes. Yeah, we try. We even have a project, but we never did it really, to go to all our clients and ex-clients and do exploration and validate it. But this we haven't done. But I think our thinking is like this, yes. And also, yeah, on startups I was involved. Yeah.
In fact, it's true because you don't sell just to be done. You sell the fact that you will have companies to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, we want our companies to grow and to develop great things that grow the business. And job to be done is a solution to get there. But there are other solutions that we apply, other frameworks. Yeah.